All right. Without any further ado, I have our next guest, Steve and Chutisa Bowman. Welcome, Bowmans. Thanks for being here. How are you guys?
We're coming to you from sunny Auckland in New Zealand early in the morning.
So you know what it's like tomorrow as well.
Yes.
2 hours ahead of Australia. So, you know,
You
we're
were
even
like-
more ahead.
We'll take any advantage we can.
How are you, Julia? You have been amazing. I've been listening to you.
Oh, you
Keep
have?
it up with
Oh, thank you so
morning.
much. It's so nice. I'm so glad. It just pinged me. I was like, Steve and Chutisa have to be on book day. And I'm so glad that you guys could make it because you know, I love the way that you guys write and look at things. And this is our 3rd annual book day. And I'm just so glad that you guys are here for it. So thanks for being here.
Our pleasure, Julia. It was you that asked, of course we said yes.
Thank you. So, and it's also good to see you guys. I haven't seen you guys in a while, so it's really nice. So, you have written, today we're going to talk about 2 of your books, Prosperity Consciousness, and it says, the subtitle is Leading Yourself to Money with Conscious Awareness. So that's the first book we're going to talk about. And the second book we're going to talk about is Conscious Leadership, the Key to Unlocking Success. So how did you guys get involved in the leadership realm? Go ahead.
The whole area of leadership, people misidentify a lot of what it's about. It's, you know, they look at the externalities of here's what everyone is telling me I need to do to be a good leader. And what we chose to do, because that's the space that we work in, we work with boards and CEOs and senior executive teams, executive leadership teams around the world. And one of the things that is very seldom talked about is what can I be and do different to create a greater change in the world. Yeah. And for some people, they need to hear the word leadership before they'll even pick it up. For other people, they see the word leadership and they run away.
Yep.
So what we did there, and Chutisa is the instigator of all of this, was to distill into that some of the things you just don't find written anywhere else in the leadership sphere, particularly aimed at those who want to be not only a leader in an organization, but a leader in their own life. What does that look like? And what are some of the questions that you can ask and be and do? And unpick this using this reality's language. So in that leadership book, for example, we talk a little bit about risk. Now, most people wouldn't want to talk about risk, but so what if we actually unpicked all of the definitions that we had about what these things meant so that we could actually create something greater?
It is very interesting that you showed that book, Conscious Leadership. How that book came about was that actually it came about in Auckland, New Zealand, when he was in the class with Gary Douglas. He came 18 years ago. And during that time, I was working as a senior executive in corporate world in Australia. And I said to Gary, you know, what can I do to introduce this to executive level who's not functioning consciously? I mean, all the leaders I was working with, they're very anti-conscious. Most of them are unconscious. So we started talking about, would that be a good idea to introduce conscious leadership? And we thought, would anyone care or no? But we thought, no, you know what? We're just going to call it conscious leadership. Because when we introduced that term, not too many people wrote about conscious leadership 18 years ago. But now when you Google the word conscious leadership, you have millions of books written about it. And so that's how it came about. So now we're in Auckland, New Zealand again. So
it all came full circle.
Exactly.
Huh. I remember the first time that I read Prosperity Consciousness. I just fell in love with it because of all of the different, like there's little sections in here called practical processes, and there's tools and there's questions that you give us to ask. And I started using them, and I was so lucky. I think I started reading your guys' books when I was 20, and it gave me from a young age sort of, I set out in looking at leadership in a different way and approaching business in a different way. But it's like you guys talk in these books about making life a celebration. Who talks about that in the leadership realm? You talk about, not having any judgment and asking questions. It's like that just doesn't happen anywhere else but this, especially at that time. But it's like, where did you took these access tools and applied them, but like, what was that like for you going in and applying these tools in this super different way with CEOs? I imagine you had to be very subtle and very just willing to sort of just tweak a little something to open the door. Like, what was that like?
The first way I would respond to that is to say we actually chose to be those tools first before we taught them.
Beautiful.
That was the first thing. And yeah, we're getting there. Not quite there, but we're getting there. But the other thing is, for example, yesterday, I ran 2 workshops yesterday here in Auckland, and they were made up of some of the CEOs of the top organizations and the chairs here in New Zealand. What did we talk about there? Well, we had a day on advanced strategy, risk and governance. That's what I called it. But we talked about choice. What's the difference between a choice and a decision? And we talked about not having fixed points of view about things, and then creating innovation from looking at what could be, what might be, and without having a point of view about whether it's right or wrong. Wow. We talked a long time about the notion of risk and what that looks like when you start to see opportunity and possibility in everything. So these things just permeate the way that we see the world, and putting that and using that with the language that people are willing to see, you could see the CEOs and the chairs of the boards just sitting back and literally going, oh, I'd never thought of it that way. And that's one of the gifts of these books, is it enables people to look at things from just a different way. I'd never thought of looking at that way. Now you can.
And the concept of choice versus decision is so well received in the business world, because no one ever explained to them the differences between choice and decision. And most people in the business world think that once they make decision, they have to keep that going if they want to be, the word authentic, or the word.
Once we've made a decision, it's the decision.
Yeah,
not to be questioned or changed, because it's
yes.
So by introduce the word choice to them, they actually say, oh, okay, so it's not a bad thing that we don't have to stick to our decision forever and ever and ever. How many businesses that we hear about that collapse and fail because they kept a fixed point of view about the decision they made? Therefore, they cannot change the decision. But by introducing that, you can make a choice. And if the choice doesn't work, you have to make different choice.
In this reality, they call that innovation. They call it being nimble. They call it, whatever you want to call it. But all these things that organizations aspire to. But what often it just comes down to, don't analyze it. Don't overanalyze it. Just choose. And if it doesn't work, choose again. If that doesn't work, choose again. And this is what most people go, really? and then in all of that, all you're doing is you're overlaying almost a meta idea, an idea that is above other ideas, which is everything is but a choice. And then when you start talking about, but we need the evidence, I say, sure, but don't wait for the evidence. have a look to see what the evidence is and keep choosing, knowing full well that there is no such thing as right or wrong. The key question, and this is straight out Access, this one, the key question is this working? Does it work for us? And therefore, any reporting that you're doing to the board should be focusing on, is this working? Does it work for us? Not, look how busy I am.
Which is a very, very big thing in the corporate world. Look how busy I am.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That must be very fun to introduce. What's that?
I said, look at the smile on our faces, because it is huge fun, because it enables us to travel the world, allowing people to change
the world one CEO at a time. That's what
yeah.
One board at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I just love that feeling, that energy that comes up when somebody takes in a new idea or a new possibility that they had never considered before.
It's a hoot.
It is a hoot. And I mean, you get to do this in totally different ways all the time. And you know, it's not just you two that have the opportunity to do that. We can all do this in our lives, with our families, with our spouses, with our friends, you know, with the people that we work with. Just asking a question introduces people to a different possibility, and they go, huh, I didn't think about it that way. And that's what changes the world. Yeah. Oh, that's so brilliant.
When we did the book about conscious leadership, we also introduced the notion that you can choose to be conscious, you can choose to be unconscious, and you can choose to be anti-conscious. It's just a choice, and they said the choice. Do I have choice to choose to be any of those? And people never actually contemplate or think about that. You know, it's just like, oh, but, you know, in this moment, I can choose to change from being unconscious to conscious now. It's just a choice you have to make in that moment. And they thought, wow, never thought about it that way. So
the other thing that people go wow over is that you can be all three in the one day. You just don't judge it.
And it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. It just is.
It's not wrong to be unconscious.
But recognizing and then knowing that you can make change, not to be better, just to change.
Yes.
You know, if being anti-conscious works for you, then be anti-conscious. Have a nice life. Go for it. But when we start looking at that from the corporate side of things, then you know, we often talk about anti-conscious as someone who is not willing to see that there is anything other than the rightness of their point of view, that they are going to hit you around the head, which in these days is called bullying and harassment, until you agree with them or you change your behavior to fit in with what they want, and that they are so determined they're right and everyone else is wrong that the only evidence they're interested in is to prove what other people are wrong and how right they are. And anti-conscious leadership. Now, and there's a lot of people out there like that, because that's who they choose to be, not because they're leaders, but that's who they choose to be. And then they take that into a leadership position where they're working with other people. Now, all those things are change, that it can change, but one of the key messages we get across is you cannot change other people. Only you can change. So if you change and you look to, you be that grandfather clock that is the energy and the harmonic coherence, that other people start to change just by being around you without you trying to change them.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's just hitting me how much fun you guys must have inviting people to these concepts. I mean, it's just, I mean, I have this much fun when I do it in, you know, in the classes that I facilitate. And I love thinking about you doing this in this very specific setting of working with boards and working with CEOs. It's so fun. So Karen is asking, how do you work with someone who chooses anti-consciousness?
Well, you're aware that they're choosing anti-consciousness, and you ask them if you can ask them questions. If they don't want to change, why would you work with them?
Awesome.
And if they do change, I mean, we've got a couple of CEOs who are quite anti-conscious. Okay, so I spend my time talking to their boards rather than them.
Right. How do I get around them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we work with the board, I mean, we have a smaller board in Australia, New Zealand than in US. US has enormous board.
20, 40, 60
Yeah.
people.
So
Really?
can you imagine how many number of anti-conscious, unconscious, and mixture in that? In Australia, we have near half the size. So, but we still have a combination of mixture of unconscious, anti-conscious, and conscious board member.
Wow.
So when we get called in to work with the board, to allow them to see why are they there? Why are they sitting on the board? Why are they making the choice to be part of that board? And some people will have different agenda of why they are there. But our choice to be there is to invite them to see that if you're going to be here anyway for the next 2 or 3 years as a board member, what would it be like if you become a contribution? What would it be like that just instead of just sitting here because you think it's a status symbol to be, a director of the board or something like that? What if you could be a contribution to create something totally different by being here instead of just, because I get paid to be here or something? So to be able to invite them to see that there are different ways that they can be on the board is huge. But I think one thing we have learned too is we can invite people, but we can't expect them to receive that fully either. It can take quite a long time for them to actually get what it means to change the way they function. But if we can get people who totally receive it, of what it means to be a conscious leader, and to totally comprehend what it can be like, they can be a catalyst for that. And in our book, Conscious Leadership, we talk about the grandfather clock.
Yep,
Remember that chapter? So we actually introduced that to the one who functioned from conscious, as a conscious leadership, that they can become a grandfather clock and be the energy, space, and consciousness that can entrain the rest of the people to be in that space without trying to force them to be in that space. So when we go into work with the board, like we do governance training, we do strategic planning, we do all of those things, we ourselves made the choice to be the grandfather clock. Instead of trying to force them to receive our message, is to be the grandfather clock, to change energy, create a new space, and allow the consciousness to be there. So do you want Steve to talk a bit about what it means to be a grandfather clock?
Yes, I do. I do want Steve to talk about what that is.
You see how I passed the baton over to Steve. We can talk about it.
I love you.
The conscious leader I am.
I love you.
I just got delegated.
She just always makes me laugh. You always make me laugh.
The energy that you be is what other people pick up on without having to put words to it. So that's why you can walk into a room and within about 4 or 5 minutes, you know everyone in the room. You haven't talked to them, but you know them. You can pick out the crusty old fart. You can pick out the person who's anti-conscious. You just know who they are. You know who the ones are that are being the grandfather clock themselves in terms of their energy of being calm, cool, collected, all those sorts of things. But also they know themselves. So you know that within a couple of minutes of walking into any room, if you're willing to be that yourself. So what happens is that people pick up on the energy of everyone else in the room. So if there's a lot of frantic energy from people in there, from the anti-conscious, and this happens a lot. They'll, one anti-conscious person in a room can totally change the culture and the harmonics of that room.
Talk about the entrainment, the research that conducted.
And as part of that, then we also know that energy that the people are being entrains other energies as well. So when they first came up with this idea of harmonic coherence, where the harmonics of energy interact with each other and create a different set of harmonics, the first evidence of this was Hans Huygens, the Dutch scientist, who recognized that if he filled up a couple of rooms with grandfather clocks, over the space of a few days, they would all synchronize their pendulums to the largest grandfather clock. So within a few days, no matter what their frequency and what their harmonics were, they would all synchronize themselves with the larger grandfather clock. And so therefore all their pendulums would start to swing.
The same as the largest.
And so when they started to look at what that actually meant, that was the start of mathematics theory. That was the start of music theory. So the notion of harmonics comes about from understanding that energies interact with energies, and they can have a huge influence just by their energy, just by who and what they are. Now, this then led on to quantum physics. So now we have... Oh, absolutely. So now we have this notion of harmonic coherence, where things are coherently aligning themselves with an energy. Then we're starting to find this has led into quantum mechanics, quantum theory, and it just is changing the world because it is.
See, when you hear Gary and Dan talk about the energy that you are choosing to be can change environment and everyone around you. Well, it's the harmonic coherence and entrainment. That's what it is. So who are you choosing to be, basically? And if you really the grandfather clock, when you are so potent and powerful energy, you will entrain everyone to be that. So when you think, okay, so truly, can I really change people and things around me? Well, think of a grandfather clock that has been tested over and over and over time. Would you willing to be the grandfather clock that can change everything around you? And
just by being you, just by having your own pendulum. Right. Dane here summarized it beautifully. Be you, change the world.
Exactly.
That's exactly what that's summarized in that title of his book.
You know what makes me so excited about the grandfather clock theory is how quickly, or that's true, about the grandfather clock. What is it called?
Observation.
Observation. About the grandfather clock observation is that there is great hope for us changing the world to become a better place. Because if we have the few strong grandfather clocks that that those of you listening to this broadcast are, we will be able to change the world.
Change the world one person at a time. Change the world one board at a time. Change the world one child at a time. Change you.
Right.
But the key thing is it's not about...
It is so true, though.
It is very true.
If you don't believe it's true, go and Google the research of the grandfather clock research and read it, and then you will realize that you could actually be that. I was sort of experimenting or practicing. I have a grandson who's about 16 months old. He was screaming.
Congratulations!
And didn't want to go to anyone, so I just sat there, focus on energy, space, and consciousness, that I could be, pulling the energy and things. He wouldn't go to anyone. And I would just sat there on the couch and ask the question, what generative energy, space, consciousness can I be, blah, blah, blah. Within 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes, yeah.
He walked over with his book and sat next to me.
Crawled up on the couch, got in her lap, put his head on her breast, started looking at the book, and then he went back to being a nuisance. period of time where he was totally in harmonic coherence with what Chutisa chose to be. And everyone can do that.
You could see him. I said to Steve, it was just palpable to play with kids like that, because you could hear him was in the full expression of and then he suddenly stopped and thought, what is that energy? What's pulling me? What is, and then he stopped and then he just walked over. It's so amazing, and I'm just blown me away that it's truly just like that.
Wow, that is so.
Try it
beautiful.
next time with some kids, Julia.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And the practical side of all of this is that you literally can walk into a room. If any of you are in consulting business or you run business of any sort, you walk into a room. If you are that grandfather clock, people know there's something different about you.
They do.
And then all of a sudden, rather than people coming at you or people trying to destroy or manipulate or what, all of a sudden they're starting to be entrained because you are being that yourself.
Wow. It's like, it's just.
Welcome to conscious leadership.
I love it. I love it. And it's just, you become this, you gift this, you receive this. There's just, it's just such a wonderful way of living in the world and being in the world. And I love these books. These books are like, this one was not an easy read, if I'm being honest.
People have said that they have found it to be one of the most difficult books to read.
Yeah.
And no, I was going to say, no, I won't say it, but it's the point of view that people take about things really more than anything else. So once you get over the point of view that it's difficult, then you start to pick, so what does this mean for me? What are the insights that I get from it?
Yeah, it was not an easy read, and still it just once I did get past that, the impact that it had on my life was profound. So definitely, folks, I challenge you to conscious leadership. And to grandfather clock.
That book was the bestseller with the Institute of Company Directors for about 2 years.
Was it really?
Yeah, way back. And they had no idea that it was anything other than just a very different way of looking at leadership.
Because we didn't put any stories or anything into it, just succinctly go directly to the possibilities and those leaders who are having issue or problem with their style of leadership tend to pick it up and say, now I know what it means, without having to read the story about somebody did this. You know how the style of book that easy read is a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of things. This one has none.
We strip this one bare.
None.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so great. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on. It was fun to see you both.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Very honored to hear from you and to get the invitation.
Thank you.
Awesome.
One of the things I would just like to mention, you showed the other book there, Prosperity Consciousness. This book has a life of its own. It's just the number of people that are using it, that have set up book clubs around it. Because what it does is it starts to talk about how you can change the way you see the world that can actually open up huge possibilities. Now, if you need to call it money, then call it money. If you need to call it possibility, then call it possibility. But the precepts and the content within that book is literally forms the foundation of how we teach governance, strategy, risk, strategic planning, compliance, a whole range of things. But it all comes from a sense of prosperity awareness, a sense that there is infinite possibilities out there. And if you want to call it innovation, or if you want to call it leadership, or if you want to call it risk management, I don't care what you call it, but you come from that space that there are infinite possibilities out there. Let's get to work.
Well, even yesterday, when you invite the two board members to look whether they function from prosperity or scarcity, when they kept on saying it's too high, hard, so hard to get the grant from the government, too hard to get new member, too hard. And Steve asked them to start looking at, is that from scarcity or from prosperity? And that was so cool. They're just still talking about
And
it.
they got it, and then they debriefed afterwards to see how they could change their board.
Anyway, we better stop.
Yes.
Poor Julie has been on for the past
it's been fun.
hours.
I want to keep going. I could go for another hour with you two. It's been 5 hours. This is the 5th hour of our 5-hour broadcast.
Well done.
Thank
You're
you.
amazing. And I was watching when you were interviewing then. I thought, oh my goodness, you must be so thirsty talking nonstop. That's a projection, I suppose. I know you you don't feel thirsty.
The only thing with the 5 hours was during Simone's broadcast, I said, I texted her, I said, Simone, I might have to go to the loo while your talk is on. So
Keep the stage, Simone. I'll be back.
Exactly. But other than that, no issues. Well, thank you both. Thank you for being here. And how does it get better? And I hope to see you in the world sometime soon.
Hope so too.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.